Hello and welcome to the Thread to MEND podcast. My name is Taylor and I come to you from Baltimore, Maryland. This is a podcast about things that are fiber related. So I usually touch on the subjects of knitting or spinning. In this episode I have a lot of spinning to show you and very likely a long ramble about climate change and soil regeneration. Maybe I'll just get into that right now because it's constantly on my mind. And I know you're probably here for the knitting, so I'll keep it very short. But I had a very productive knitting week, if not because I was just devastated by the news of the fires happening in Australia, and I won't even get into U.S. foreign policy, but I just kind of felt the general existential dread really like pounding down heavily on Saturday morning when I had the chance to kind of stop and think about the world and not, the regular work week. And I have a tendency, if you know me well, this is funny to you. And even if you watch this channel frequently, you probably already know that I have tendencies of obsessive compulsion. And I don't say that to romanticize it in any way or make it funny, but you have to laugh at life, otherwise you'll just cry constantly if you're anything like me. So anyway, I obsessively consumed video content, kind of like what felt like grad level knowledge on regenerative agriculture and how it can be applied to like the true commercial farmers to build a more sustainable and ecological system, one that captures carbon and holds it in the earth and pulls it out of our atmosphere. So anyway, I was just fascinated by that because in a lot of ways, well, everything comes back to yoga in my mind because it is what it's like my form of philosophy in a sense. Like there's yoga philosophy and I am a student of that. So from the angle of anyway, it all of that to say that it is in line with such, and I just can't get enough. I'm like totally obsessed, and I think like a few months ago when I was having a mild midlife crisis, I was like, I want to make yarn. Now I'm like, I want to farm land. I don't know what I'm doing with my life, but it's like halfway over, so I feel like I should figure out what my grand plan is to save the planet. All right, let's get back to the knitting. I have to show you all my progress on I forget the name of this cardigan. It's spelled Tonnach. No idea how to say that. I'm not even gonna try. Sorry. But if someone could say it and I could hear it said, then I would say it. But I've just never have. So I'm gonna wait and see. Wait and hear. But anyway, this is my lovely piece of fabric I have knitted in this last week. I started with, okay, this is going to be a hard one to show you, right? But it'll kind of block the sun out of my face. Yeah, so I did the whole, I updated Instagram with my progress on this, but I basically knit the long piece in a day, and then in about another day, I knit the back. I'd say 2 days because it was a work day. And one thing I do when I have to put stitches on waste yarn is I actually put them on other cables because I have an interchangeable set with many cables to back me up. And so I have the front sides resting on separate cables, which is nice because then I can just unwind my needle, plop it on the next cable, and be ready to roll. So I don't know if any of you do that, but it's my little pro tip for the day is use cables in place of waste yarn. I do notice that the these little plastic ends will, like when you're just like moving your knitting around, they'll spin off. And so I was like changing my needles to go to the next cable, and I couldn't find one of my ends. So I just stuck a stitch marker in there because I feel like that there's no way the stitches are going to come off. So it's a little bit more, it's almost more permanent because it's not going to unscrew. So yeah, little second pro tip of the day. Oh, and I also use stitch markers for holding when I have very few stitches to hold on waste yarn. I have 8 stitches crammed on this little guy, but I feel like the metal, even though it's thin, it does hold the shape of the stitches better than string does, because sometimes my stitches on waste yarn get a little inverted when they're tugged at the edge here, and then I have to work really hard to pull it back up and out. And I feel like with these stitch markers in place, even though it kind of cinches it in a little bit, it's a lot easier to pick up and knit. So I've really, if you can't tell, I've really been enjoying this feather and fan pattern. I think these colors are freaking amazing. I know that they're not for everybody. There are people, well, I'm sure there are people that would never even consider these colors and probably don't watch my channel anymore because of my color palette, if they prefer pinks and purples. But I don't know how anyone could not love this. It's so good. I haven't done this yet, but I'm gonna pick it up and kind of measure it. So this theoretically, and so I don't know, I sometimes doubt my methods of measure, but this should be 7 inches for my size. And sometimes when I measure it, it's 6.5, sometimes it's 7. So I'm just gonna switch over, I'm gonna pause, I'm gonna switch to the front, knit the fronts. And if I just have to try a few different times at seaming the shoulders together to try it on for fit, I'm gonna just do that. And then if I need to rip out that one row to pick up and knit a couple extra rows on both the fronts and the back, then I will. So I'm just taking a little pause here. I'm not sure I want to end on the yellow, but if I have to seam the shoulders with the yellow, that would be more ideal than any other color because I have the most of it, just given the pattern repeats and the number of skeins I have. So that might help me out in the long run. I do anticipate a mild yarn chicken game here, but what I plan to do is finish the fronts and the shoulder and cast on to knit the arms, and then I will actively measure my grams per row to determine my right and left sides are even. And then what I expect is going to happen is that of this color here, I'm going to run out of yarn first. Of all the colors I have, with all the yardage I have, the only color I might run out of in this project is this one here. So once I get the fronts done, I'll have a better gauge of how much is reserved for the sleeves, and then I will go from there. There are so many things I can do to have full length sleeves with this garment, whether I run out of that yarn or not. Some of my thoughts, because I'm kind of brewing up ideas, but some thoughts I have are, if you can see here, that color I picked up is this one here. And so you pretty much use equal parts of this and this, but you use half as much of this yellow as you do this greeny yellow. So what I could do is, instead of knitting 4 rows for each repeat on the sleeves, once I get down to like whatever amount of space I have left to knit and however much yarn I have, I could first begin by decreasing this section in the repeat to only 2 rows instead of 4. And then my patterning will still be on point for the increases and yarn overs, decreases, whatever. But it'll still have the same kind of gradient effect. It'll just be a little bit more concentrated, a little shorter repeat, which I think will be kind of cool, especially when this is kind of a short sweater, and very often the length of sleeve that I'm talking about knitting is like here down. So if the pattern is not identical, at the point below kind of the ribbing, then I think that might be a really nice design element to it, is that it's a little bit more dynamic than just a single pattern repeat, that it might change near the cuff. And then another thought I have is that if I don't want to do that for whatever reason, I can also, just given how much brown this pattern called for, this is my second of 4 skeins, 25 gram skeins. So just based on how much I've used so far, I can say I'll probably not even crack into my 4th. And if I want to, I could just make really long ribbed cuffs. Like they could be cuffs that start here and just extend down to my wrist, for an effect that is just more simple than adding different patterning to the colors. So anyway, that's what's going on with this project for me. I love steam blocking because it really makes the fabric that much nicer to see. You know, it kind of really makes it look real. But this is so bright and cheerful that I've really been enjoying it this week. Like I think, I don't remember, well, I guess I started this on the 1st. So today it's 1 week in and I'm like halfway done. Not quite. I guess I have, yeah, I don't know. I mean, just about halfway. So the thought of finishing a sweater in like 2 weeks is astonishing to me. I don't know about you, but I was looking on Ravelry I was looking on Ravelry at the projects that I've made these last couple years, and I made like half the number of projects in 2019 than I did in 2017 or 18. I think it was like 14 or 15, and then only 9 last year. And I used to, I think before 2019, in 2017, I was like a newer knitter and I was like, boom, boom, boom. I think I did my first sweater that year. So then I was like, yes, I need to do as much as, if not more than before. And I did, I guess, accomplish 1 more project than I did the previous year. I don't know if that was intentional at this point now. I can't remember. Although I probably mentioned it in an episode and I could just watch to know, but and then in 2019, so July of 2018 through pretty much July of 2019, I had a different role at my job, and it was way more demanding than anything I've ever done professionally. And I couldn't make time to knit, which was not my preferred way of living. So I stepped out of that role so that I could just be more balanced in my life, the life that I live. So am I going to be making more projects than last year? Yes, I am. Am I going to make myself create 14 or 15? I don't think so. Part of me is like, yes, of course I'm going to make that many because that's what I'm capable of. But then I'm like, I'm not really weighing the volume. What I am invested in is like the complexity of such things. Like I might only make X number of sweaters, but I'm making sweaters that are like really either intricate in their color work or in their cabling, or, you know, maybe I'll spin a sweater that I knit. Like that always takes more time than just buying the yarn. So I feel like I'm conceptualizing projects differently than I did just a couple years ago, which is kind of cool to see that progress in my just approach and mentality and practice. Obviously, I'm still competitive with myself because I'm like, I knit so much yesterday, I must still knit today. But it's just my way of coping with the reality we live in, which is this place is up. Like really bad, like not okay. I'm not okay with the way things are, in like every way. And I feel like the thing that upsets me the most is that people are looking to people to fix it, and people will not fix this. Like people are the problem. And I just, that's that's just like what's at the forefront of my mind in my life right now, is this misanthropic perception of reality that is people can do nothing but harm. So I don't know how I don't know what to do. I'm just kind of laying in bed knitting my sweaters. Which is not a solution either, but I am obsessed with plants, and more than plants, I would say I'm obsessed with my soil. I've made a couple videos for my channel of my garden tour. They're not popular videos. No one has watched them. I think 123 or something views on either of them. I don't expect people to be interested in both knitting and gardening, but I just see a lot of correlation with the two. You continually improve year over year. You spend time planning and gathering and coordinating and efforting. And there's so many rewards to growing plants. So if you're into plants, I'll share some of the links of this amazing regenerative agriculture channel that I've been listening to. It's probably not methods that are applied in like indoor plant environments or even like single small gardens like my own. It's kind of more mass production based approaches to things. Like, I'm probably never gonna pay for a sap analysis on my plants, but now that I know more information, I'll probably do a foliar application of minerals or nutrients for my plants that are conservative in nature, or perhaps even approach my composting methods in a new way this year by doing like a foliar spray rather than just doing a little topsoil treatment to like topping off the beds with compost. And I'm just continually fascinated by all things plants. I have a plant in my bathroom. I've been spending a lot of time with it lately because I just bought I bought a new light fixture, and I've been wanting to replace this light fixture since we bought our home 4 or 5 years ago now. 4 years ago. 5? It'll be 5 in June. But I've been, ever since we bought the house, I wanted to change it, and of course I never did because it's not a priority, but I found this fixture on West Elm and it was on sale and I had to buy it, and I installed it yesterday. And then my husband, who actually does like electrical work, was like, "What do you mean you installed it?" And this morning, like, I helped him take it off the wall to double check my work because I mentioned in conversation, I didn't know you had to screw the plastic things. And he's like, "What?" So I just like jammed them on, which is not the right approach. So I'm glad he's actually an expert in these things, and we very easily just like unscrewed 3 things, pulled it off, put it back on. The reason it gave me such a headache was that I have this gorgeous plant that sits on the shower wall, and it kind of cascades down and then all the way over to the light fixture and then back to the shower, and it's just really a monster of a plant. And when so that plant was not always an amazing plant. It was a mediocre plant at best. And then what I did one day was I just chopped it back completely. I don't know if I repotted it into a new container because I brought one home, or if I just added to the topsoil, but I add to the topsoil of all my plants, but especially this one. I must have replanted it in my compost. Whatever batch of compost that was must have been incredible because it had perhaps the density or supply of nutrients that this plant really required to super thrive. Like, it has even, one of the things that I've been learning in these videos is that typically plants photosynthesize at a rate of like 15% of their capacity, their total capacity, which was, I guess, measured sometime in the 70s. Like what a plant can potentially photosynthesize. And so for plants to photosynthesize at a rate closer to 100% of their capacity, what they require are the exact nutrients, meaning minerals or elements, whatever, that they are deficient in. So you don't necessarily want to apply fertilizers unknowing exactly what those deficiencies are, because it's the excess of alternative nutrients that create such deficiencies. So it's important to know what your plants need. I don't use any store-bought fertilizers for any of my plants ever, anywhere, inside or outside. I should rephrase that. I have bought, and sometimes I think about whether I should or shouldn't apply them, and I don't know that I ever do. If I have in the last year or two, it was tomato plants and like tomato feeder, which was probably necessary. I don't know. But what happens is that when the plants have the nutrients they need, they obviously thrive and they create this great life above the ground, but they create more biomass beneath the surface, more roots. And then those roots have a symbiotic relationship with the mycelium. Is that the word? Anyway, with the teeming life under the ground in the soil. So basically, when a plant is happy and thriving, then the soil is fed by the plant, because the plant is photosynthesizing all of this energy and it's sinking that energy into different areas. Sometimes it's the flowering, if it's a flowering season, or leaves, if it's the growing season, or the roots. And so the more you can get a plant to photosynthesize and kind of dunk that energy down into the earth, the more carbon you are sequestering into the ground and the land and the soil. So you really want to maximize photosynthesis, to take out CO2, put it in the ground, and feed the soil, which then thrives. And it's a thriving soil that gives to thriving plants. But it starts with the plants. There's a conceptualization that good plants come from happy, healthy soil, but you don't have happy, healthy soil without healthy, happy plants. So that was a revelation to me. I didn't really realize that, although it's common sense when you think about it. You know, what does land look like when it has no plants versus when it does, and then when they're thriving, the difference there. The last 4 years, I guess 5 years now, it'll be in July, in my garden, we made a lot of progress little by little. I'm not an aggressive gardener. I'm a casual gardener. I grow perennials, so I don't have to financially reinvest every year in each growing season. And the thing I like about perennial gardens is that you learn about plants more as an observer. So when plants stay established in their beds and they come up on their own in the spring, they're not planted out in the spring, I get to see what their patterns are and how they respond to the elements of their nature. So whether it's, you know, wet or dry, or hot or cold, or sunny or not, you know, when are they deciding they're ready to kind of spring forth into the season? Things that, you know, you learn patterns of plants that you just don't know intuitively if you're not that plant. So, you know, like I never would have succeeded in gardening probably if I stuck to annuals, because I don't know when things want to be living and when they don't. I need them to tell me. So some things I've enjoyed growing are raspberries, super easy. Please do yourself a favor and just go get a stick of raspberries. It's not going to be a thing this year if you're just putting a new little shoot or whatever in the ground. It's going to establish roots over the year. It'll spring up sister canes like the next year, and then the year after that you'll have fruit. So you need to do it now. I think there's a Chinese proverb that is, if you want to plant a tree, the best time is 20 years ago. The second best time is today. So but raspberries are fantastic, so much fun to grow. I live in, like I said before, Baltimore, Maryland, so our zone is 7B. I anticipate that with climate change, it's going to get hotter and wetter. So I'm sticking with plants that do well in hot weather, and, you know, maybe they need drainage, which I can manage on my little piece of land. It's not land, it's a yard. But, you know, I'm making the soil healthier and better each and every year. That's really my focus. And so I feel like the water management, even though we have very heavy clay soil, is going to get better with that. We don't have standing water, so I feel like we're okay. So I just bought 3 blueberry plants. I got the Southern High Bush variety. I'm really nervous about their success because I have not been preparing their beds to acidify the soil. I don't even know what my soil pH is, to be honest with you. I've been trying to test it. I'm having trouble with the slurry because there is so much clay. It's hard to see through the cloudiness of what the results are on the pH test. But I think it's around a 6. I'm not sure. So if they need a 4.8 to 5.2, I feel like the amendment could be minimal. And I might be able to do it closer to like now, where I know they're going to go, and amend the soil now with whatever they need. And then maybe the pH will be ready for planting in the spring. I don't even know when my plants are going to arrive. I just know January 10th, I think they're taking pre-orders through the 10th, so maybe they'll ship sooner than later. I can't imagine they're gonna ship blueberries in the winter. I mean, I'm assuming they're gonna send them to me in the spring, but I have no clue. And I don't even know why I'm rambling about this to you all, because you're not here for that. But I got blueberries, and they're, like I said, Southern High Bush, so they're gonna be tall and big. And we'll see how that goes. I'm going to try to do my best at growing them, but that'll be a new adventure. And you never know what's going to thrive in your space. I have a lot of shade, so I don't know. I mean, I'm going to make sure that they're in the sunnier part of the yard, wherever possible. And I have to decide which areas I want to maintain a perennial garden still, and because I have a couple beds that are more annual gardens where I grow things like cucumbers and tomatoes and greens and such. So I don't really this is gonna sound strange, but I don't really eat a lot from my garden. I don't know, I haven't invested in a soil test, so the things that I eat from my garden are fruits and things that like fruits are the last part of a plant that is going to contain heavy metals. If there's heavy metals in your soil, they're going to be in the leaves and the stems of the plant more, or the roots especially, than they would be in the fruits. So for that reason, I don't really grow like carrots or potatoes or beets, but I do grow a lot of kale and a lot of collard greens. Last year it was collard greens. This past year it was kale, to pull heavy metals up out of the soil if they are there. So I've been growing those types of greens the last 3 years in each of the beds. And so the first year I just don't consume any of that plant material, and I don't add it back into my compost bin. I throw it in the trash, which always feels really strange and sad. But it just gives me a little bit more confidence that the ground is okay to eat from. At the same time, I'm realizing that I've been planting garlic the last 2 years, and I eat that like every day. So maybe I'm slowly poisoning myself. At this point, I don't even care, because everyone else makes poor decisions. Why can't I? So yeah, I'm growing garlic over winter this year too. I didn't as aggressively plant out, so I don't even know where I have it planted. I don't know. I just got lazy, and I was afraid that maybe I shouldn't really be planting it in the same place this year after last year. I don't want to contribute to any like fungal issues in the world, but I haven't had any issues so far, so I just did it and we'll see how it goes. I'm using all seed from last year, or actually it's not seed from last year. I'm replanting out in my garlic beds, garlic that I grew this past year. So I didn't have to buy any garlic seed because I have so much of it. So that was fun. And I bought blueberries instead of seed. I did get sugar snap peas and nasturtiums. Those are two things that I kind of can't live without in the springtime, so I'll plant those out. And then I haven't really planned the rest of the garden. I'm not diligent in preparation and planning. I do that thing no one should do, which is just buy the plants that you really want, whether you're sure it's going to work. But there have been times I brought home plants I'm sure would work and they didn't. So I'm not that sure it won't. So we'll have to wait and see. I guess it'll be a couple of years before, well, I think the plants I'm buying are 2 to 3 years, so they might be at the stage where they're starting to bear fruit, which is why they're selling them, because that's kind of how things go. But it'll probably be not this year that we get any fruit at all. I expect maybe next year, the start of it, but maybe the next year after that was when we'll see real progress on the production. So this is now a gardening podcast, in case you didn't know. I'm sure you're not here any longer. I'm sure no one's watching. And yeah. Oh, I need to go to work now. I've been recording Tuesday mornings, which has been nice. Have a routine. I don't think that there's anything I have to share with you because I've literally done nothing but knit this sweater. I installed that light fixture and buy blueberry plants. So that's my weekly update here. But I would love to know what you're planning for the spring. Are you a gardener? Are you planning to invest in perennials? What do you love to grow? What grows well near you? I want to know these things because if you have the overlap of knitting and gardening with me, then we have to connect. We have to talk about this because it's important. It's good stuff. And there's not enough good stuff in the internet world. So let's create it, right? Okay, that's all for the Thread to Mend podcast. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you made it to the end of this episode. If you want to find me on social media, you can under the name Taylor E. Owen. Please be my friend on Ravelry. I love seeing the projects people make. And follow me on Instagram if you enjoy that platform. I'm the most active on Instagram in terms of sharing on a consistent basis, but I do update my project pages on Ravelry as much as I'm able. I'm trying to be better at it now because the more I get invested in the planning of my knitting projects, the more I read other people's notes and details, and the more value I realize there really is in updating those pages. So I'm trying to be better at adding all the info I can. And I didn't mean to go on another ramble. I hope you have a great day and you take care.